Good morning, everybody. This is A Marvelous, and I'm back, giving it to you real and uncut. Thank you for joining me as usual. You know, I appreciate your attention and time for you to be listening to this. And you could be doing so much else is very important, and that means a lot to me. So thank you for that. This particular video. Had to do. I'm going to sacrifice a lot of details just to get to the main point. I like doing things in a detailed way, but sometimes you could get so detailed that you lose the overall message, and it's more important to convey the message where people can understand me as opposed to getting weighed down in details where it loses everybody. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to just focus on main bulletin points and a general understanding, so whoever's watching this can actually have a small blueprint to apply what I'm saying and actually use it in your life, so then you can start to see the results, and then you can start to pretty much understand and see what I'm talking about in real time in your day-to-day life. So with that, this video, the main goal of this video is for people to learn how to see patterns in everything that you see, especially in the newspapers, and especially with events. Now, why is this important? As time progresses, people's consciousness, their imagination, their mental capacities are going to increase. It's going to quicken. People are going to be, it's going to be less difficult for people to lie to you, but also the type of lies that you encounter are going to be increased. So in your personal life, get used to that, especially if you're committed to change and growing and being better. The type of lies is going to be increased because you are going to be too strong to fall for anything. So with that, this video primarily is to show on a basic level how to read the news and the events properly, so you could see through it, see that all this is staged. And then the more you do that, the more you'll see that the ability to read through the nonsense that you see and hear will also translate to improving your life. So I'm going to do my best to show, A, that these events are definitely staged. B, anyone that tries to say that these events are staged, it's a collective grouping up to call such things conspiracies, when in reality, it's something different. It's designed to keep your attention away from what matters, because if you focus on what matters, you actually achieve more of the things that you aim to set out to achieve, as opposed to if your attention is scattered, struggle increases. So this video is going to show, I'm going to try to do my best to show it with references, actual just things that just are common sense that you could string together, and also learn how to regularly read the news properly and see through the nonsense in order for you to get the real picture of what's going on. So as we know, today is Wednesday, June 22nd, and Sunday, Father's Day, the NBA Finals happened. Everyone knows that. So lately, because of everything that's been happening on the stage of the world events, I've been more compelled to make videos to kind of decode what's going on, for the simple fact that I noticed that no matter where I go, I keep being bombarded with these things, and very few people is really talking about the why of why these things are happening. This past Monday, two important things happened, very important things. A lot of times when we see things like police brutality, the struggle you feel on accumulating money, lots of money, that uphill force that you feel in trying to make a change for the better, some of that is natural, some of that is artificial. The natural obstacles in life can't get around. You just have to deal with it and do your best to live the best you can despite the natural obstacles. That's just going to happen. Nature gives natural obstacles in order for us to be better. Then there are the artificial obstacles. The artificial obstacles is what I'm going to address today. And a lot of times we take for granted, or we don't realize that a lot of things that seemingly don't apply to us personally, and we think it applies to others, actually does apply to us, for the mere fact that we're all connected. And anytime you have organisms like human beings, even animals, anything that is living that has similar properties that congregate together form a consciousness. And that consciousness now becomes the consciousness of the collective. So as human beings, whether the person is in Alaska, different worldviews, different upbringings, as human beings, consciousness affects people without borders. There's no geography. If someone or groups of people do something in one area on the planet, its impact is felt consciously or unconsciously in another area of the planet. It's something called the 100th monkey theory. People are mobilized and galvanized to take action if they hear something that moves them, no matter where they're at. So with that said, this past Monday, June 20th, 2016, two important events happened. One involving the Fourth Amendment, and one involving the Second Amendment. Now, a lot of times when you're struggling, you don't really have time to think about amendments and things like that. You have a family. What's more important is your survival. What most people don't realize is that these amendments and these laws are what allow you to operate within a certain border in order for you to be able to produce for your family and produce for yourself and have a better quality of life. Understanding these things as they take place allows you to operate better, function more clearly, and achieve the things more adequately than if you did not know that. What happens is that most people, because we don't know, other people that do know are forced with the responsibility of dealing with these issues, and in a sense they become caretakers of the ignorant. It's a welfare mentality. It's kind of like a person that's on welfare. They are living off of the government, and then you have other people that don't have it and are forced to bear that burden of people that are not being active or taking an active approach to things around them. So you have two types of people. You have producers and consumers, and you have individuals that are being taken care of and people that are doing the taking care of. The reason why most people struggle is because they don't realize that they are the ones that's being taken care of. And like a baby or a child, anytime you're taken care of, it's difficult for you to assert your independence and achieve things because you're always operating in a childlike manner as opposed to a parental manner. So when you don't know the laws, you don't know what's going on, and you don't speak up or you don't take an active approach to the things that's happening in society, you are placing yourself like a child. And the people that do know are forced to take care of you. And the opposition that you might feel in achieving things is because you come across like a child as opposed to an adult. Monday, two things happened, like I said, one involving the Fourth Amendment, one involving the Second Amendment. All of this happened the day after the Super Bowl when their attention was placed on something else that just doesn't have priority over us. It means absolutely nothing to our well-being. In regards to the Fourth Amendment deals with search and seizure, right? And basically habeas corpus and your ability and right to have some kind of say-so if you're ever stopped by the police. So Monday, opinion was handed down by the Supreme Court. In that case, I'm not going to go into details. I'm just going to give frames of reference. If you can, look up Utah versus Strief, or Strife, however it's pronounced, S-T-R-I-E-F. Utah versus Strief. And this deals with something called the exclusionary rule. This opinion pretty much gives the right for police officers, if they search you for absolutely no reason or a reason that they come up with or even with a reason, and they so happen to obtain something that might be illegal, or whatever they obtain can be used in the court of law, and normally that would be excluded, because with your right to search and seizure, you have a right to due process. So whatever's found on you, if it is obtained illegally, it is not admissible in the court of law. With this decision that's handed down on this past Monday, something that is obtained from you illegally can be used in the court of law. So if you're stopped randomly for no reason at all, and it is found that you have a warrant, it is found that you have anything that's suspect, legal or illegal, you can be taken in. And when the court process happens, it can be ruled that whatever was found on you, even if it was illegally obtained by police officers, can be used as evidence and admissible in court. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of that. I just want you to look at that and think about that. Now, why is that important, right? Who cares? It's not putting money in my pocket. That's what people would say. When you see police officers take the law in their hand, you see black people get shot, or people in general with their rights being abused. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Gardner, etc., etc. When these things happen, national outcries happen, big uproars, right? Injustice, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff. What happens is that serves as a huge distraction, and it takes more attention away from what you need to do, which is take care of yourself and be the best person you could be. You can't do that if you feel fear. You can't do that if you feel threatened. And when these big national events happen, by the time most people respond, the damage has already been done. The damage isn't the officer shooting or killing someone unlawfully, showing injustice. The damage is done in moments like these, when the laws are passed and no one knows. That's when the damage is done. The purpose of government, the purpose of us even being able to have freedoms to do what we feel we need to do, is because we have to participate actively in saying what should go down and what shouldn't in terms of our government. So when we see LeBron James, alligators, gorillas, all this stupidness, all of that is set in motion purposely, because if everyone or the majority of people realize that they can be free and they have the ability to obtain whatever it is they want just by focusing on themselves and nothing else, what that does is takes commerce away. It takes power away from individuals that amass power by chaos and distraction. And I'm going to do another video on that, actually putting faces to that. These events are staged. These events are created in order for fear to happen. It's called problem, reaction, solution. It's the same thing Hitler supposedly did, creating a problem that really didn't exist, like terrorism, flying planes into buildings, and doing that so much that people feel fear, that by the time this fear hits, they're begging for a solution, which is what's going on. So how was this done in the media? And then I'm going to get to the second thing that happened on Monday. This is done by a series of events set in motion at different times, and it's done by a constant, gradual set of conditioning, whether it be TV, movies, newspapers. And what this does is it trickles down into the psyche of people. So when people congregate together and they talk, they start to spread things that have been seen through these media channels and these media outlets. Now, why do I say staged, and how is it done? I'm going to give the second thing, and then I'm going to tie that in. The second thing that happened Monday was another decision was handed down to keep a light ban on assault rifles due to Sandy Hook. Both of these things happened Monday. No one has a clue, because it wasn't meant for people to have a clue. So that's your Second Amendment. So on Monday, your basic liberties was even more restricted without us having a clue the day after the finals. Attention sacrifice. These things was already given clues to in the media when you watch it. For instance, how is it orchestrated? In order for people to be conditioned to accept something, you have to see it over and over again, and you have to get used to seeing it. When you're used to seeing something, it becomes a normal part of your day. It becomes a normal process. And when other people think that it's okay, then now you gain social acceptance by also thinking that it's okay. So something that would seemingly seem ridiculous, outrageous, and ludicrous, the more it's seen through different outlets and the more people accept it as something that's common, you now feel the pressure of either accepting that as common or continuing to reject it with the risk of being ostracized or looking like an idiot. And that's what's happening. The second thing that I was just talking about involving this ban that was upheld in terms of assault rifles, because people claim that they can't see any restriction on guns, but this happened on Monday. It was upheld that a ban on assault rifles to a certain degree because of Sandy Hook will not be overturned, and it will stand. Now, the reason why this is important, for that, look up Shew versus Malloy, SHEW versus Malloy. Now, how are things staged and how are things rigged? If you also look up District of Columbia versus Heller, this is the case that pretty much the decision on Monday was predicated on. This decision was basically upholding a person's Second Amendment rights regardless of the situation in order for people to continue to have the right to bear arms, whether those arms be assault rifles or whether they be pistols. Now, this is important because the primary individual that was handing down this opinion was a gentleman named Antonin Scalia, Justice Antonin Scalia. Justice Antonin Scalia was very vocal about things like this. But in that case of District of Columbia versus Heller, he was the main one giving the opinion to uphold the Second Amendment. Here's an example of how you can see patterns and events to tie things in. Very few people have heard of Justice Antonin Scalia. He was very vocal, extreme patriot, and he spoke in favor of things like the Second Amendment, concentration camps, things like that. This gentleman died a few months ago. Very few people know who he is, so the fact that he died, no one really cares. He died a few months ago. This was before Orlando. This was before a lot of the things that just happened. I think it was like either April or May or March. Now, the type of death that he had is very suspicious. To my knowledge, he didn't have any kind of reports of any ill health. He was vacationing, and he wound up dead. Now, I won't get into details of how he died. I'll just let you Google or look up Justice Antonin Scalia. That's one. Here's how the media prepares you for things like that to where it's no big deal or it's accepted. Prior to him dying, a long time prior to him dying, there was a Simpsons episode in which case it mentioned killing certain individuals due to their constant consistency of getting in the way of certain agendas or laws that's passed. One of the individuals named, the prince was named, he died. All of this is in a cartoon that we would see is not relevant. Another person that was mentioned was Justice Antonin Scalia. That's an example of programming and getting you used to something that you would think is trivial but winds up to be very important. Now, some would say that that's a cartoon. Now, let's fast forward. Monday, this opinion was handed down to kind of uphold the restriction on these assault rifles due to Sandy Hook, which was based on a decision which was largely influenced and decided on by this judge that died. What's interesting about that is the Democrats are the main ones that are focused on getting rid of a certain level of guns. What's also ironic is that the individual that replaced Justin Antonin Scalia, who was the one that started this whole proposal, was replaced by a Democrat. Now, why is that crucial? Why is that the tie-in? The main person that was responsible for this decision that was very crucial in keeping our rights to bear whatever arms we wanted was killed a few months. Months later, right after that, he's replaced by a Democrat. Months later, Orlando shooting happened and things like that. His replacement is a Democrat. Democrats are the main ones that want to get rid of the guns to a certain level. Events are pre-planned and they're put in motion deliberately. That is something that was already orchestrated. That is something that was already put in motion. I wish I can get more detailed, but I just want a basic frames of reference. So when you Google District of Columbia versus Heller, and you see, and you Google or you look up Justice Anton Scalia, and then you look up the decision that was handed down Monday, and then you look up things like the Simpson episode in which they mentioned killing this gentleman, and it happened, I want you to tie all of that into an outcome. Something starts, something else happens, pieces are put together, an outcome occurs. In order for these outcomes to occur, it has to be minimal backlash, or you'll have riots and revolts, because too many people that know something that's not right, and they realize that it affects their pockets, and they realize that it affects their family. This is how riots happen, as you see when the extreme end of this happens, when people get killed by cops and things like that. So in order for that to be prevented, it has to be put in a context in which it's silly and ludicrous. So one way to read the news stories and read the media is to put things together. It's not about facts necessarily, it's about patterns and symbols. This relates to a person's life because in your life you have patterns. There are things that you continuously do that's incorrect, that's not beneficial to you. There's things that you constantly do that do benefit you. In order for you to change the negative habits and increase the positive habits, you have to recognize the patterns in your life and change those patterns so you can improve. It's no different when you have a body of human beings that after a while they form a similar conscious in which it affects all of us. If you see someone on the train acting silly, talking to themselves, collectively we're going to respond the same way to that individual. It's no different when you see world events and news stories. We are all trained to think similar because we're of a similar type of species. So with that, I want you to keep patterns in mind, not facts, patterns. And as you put more patterns together, you'll start to build a case and you'll start to see things in real time. And symbols. Everything happens in symbols and patterns. When you look at products don't just have names, they have symbols. Because we think in images. We think in pictures. Reading isn't even natural. Our brain processes images and pictures. That's why you see things like the hieroglyphics in earlier language. It dealt with pictures and symbols, not letters, because letters strain the body. Letters take a lot of nutrients in order for you to process, but that's another story. So things that happen in this world are symbolic, and they have meaning and they have patterns. In order to read the events, to properly decode it, you have to look at the patterns. You have to look at time frames, you have to look at dates, and you have to look at the series of signs that are given to you in different TV shows, movies, and news stories. Once you do that, the more things you look at will start to not make sense. So I use Justice Antonin Scalia as an example of that. District of Columbia versus Heller. And all of these things were set in motion way before the final outcome. And when you look at these media stories and these TV shows, they give you hints to that in order for you to get conditioned, so when it happens, you're dumbed down. Few things to look up, to repeat: Utah versus Streif, District of Columbia versus Heller, the exclusionary rule, Shu versus Malloy, and Justice Antonin Scalia. Now, in reading the opinion, which pretty much got rid of, in a sense, it eliminated our right to have proper search and seizure. The main thing that it pretty much said was, if the social consequence outweighs the particular circumstance of a case, then it is more important for an illegal search to be allowed in a situation than not. And that's important. That means that social perception is the name of the game. What most people agree as important is what is going to affect the laws. That means that whatever you think and hundreds of other people think and the majority thinks, that is going to be the new law, period. So what you pay attention to and what you value as important is going to influence your way of living. It's going to influence how you make money, and it's going to influence your safety. So I'm saying this. I think it's important that we start putting more value into seeing what's being presented to us. Mere questions. Mere questions. When you hear names, when you see events, they're put in the context of jokes. This is on purpose. I'm not getting too detailed because I just want the message to be hammered in. Monday, these two decisions were handed down. This comes after the Orlando shooting. This comes after the playoffs and the finals, and no one had a clue. So the next time you see a police incident, next time you see someone murdered, next time you see a major news story, keep in mind that these things were already set in motion when the laws were changed. When George Zimmerman is allowed to get away with committing murder based on a stand your ground law, the crime wasn't really the killing. The crime was the law that was set in years prior to, and no one having a clue and no one speaking out. When these laws are put in place, that lays the foundation for Trayvon Martin to occur. That lays the foundation for other events to occur. And it also means that it's, by the time these things happen, it's too late for you to do anything. So your protests and all of that doesn't matter. The time to do something about things like that is when these things happen, to pay attention to these events and start to redefine and change the conversation that you have in your life. When these things happen, question, okay, well, how did it happen? Where did it happen? And question the events of everything. June 20th also was the solstice. So timing is important, because when these things happen, like the solstice, that is a time when change comes, and anything that you want to happen is more likely to occur if you request it. June 20th was the day before summer. That is when spring changes summer. That is when the energy of change comes, and your requests are more likely to be accomplished or given based on the energy of your surroundings. So I wanted people to see that. So next, there's 3 books I want people to kind of get. The first one is called An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. That's a good book because it shows that Hollywood is not about just entertainment. The purpose of Hollywood and its creation and its birth was for a group of people known as Jews from Eastern Europe was to come to California, that part of California, which was named Hollywood, to redefine their image. That is the purpose of Hollywood, is to redefine images. So Hollywood was created so these Eastern European Jews who didn't have good father figures can escape the persecution that they was feeling around that time, come to a new place. And when they came to this place, they were still being persecuted. So they came together as one body with a common interest under persecution, and they created this thing called Hollywood in film and cinema in order to redefine their image and paint things in a positive light. That is the purpose of Hollywood, is to redefine images and put things in the context that makes it favorable for the creators to operate, as opposed to just entertain you. Entertainment is the second value. Entertainment is the delivery in which you can actually take in something in a happy way to receive a message. So it's message first, then entertainment. If it's not entertaining, you won't get the message. So they have to go hand in hand. It's no different with the news. Donald Trump, assassination mention, which I said before might happen between him and Barack. All of these are for a reason. It's an election year, and it's time for certain things to be pushed forward. less guns, less privacy, because these things put you in a more robotic, slave-like mindset to make you operate in a way in which you don't question, in which you don't seek things that you are called to do. Because if you're scared to do something, you're less likely to do it. And by pushing terror and pushing these phony events, you're less likely to do something that you might feel is your passion out of fear that you might get some kind of backlash. So when you see something being promoted at a heavy level, start to look at laws, start to see what's being pushed, start to see what is not being pushed in the media. In that way, you'll be ahead of the curve, and when things do happen, you'll be more in a position to understand what's going on, and when you talk to people, you'll be able to change the conversation. So the focus is the two decisions that was passed down on Monday: Utah versus Strieff and the District of Columbia versus Heller. Those are very important. I want to address an article that I read in the Wall Street Journal. It was entitled, Why Does the IRS Have Guns? And in that article, it mentioned that there was 67 departments of the government that have nothing to do with the Department of Justice. And they have been increasing their arms, their guns and their ammunition over the last 9 years to a ridiculous level. You have agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency that have spent millions of dollars on getting guns and night vision goggles and gas explosives. Why would the Environmental Protection Agency need night vision goggles and gas explosives and things like that? Why would the Department of Veteran Affairs invest in guns? Why are 67 departments that have nothing to do with the military or the Department of Justice